One of Sydney's most notorious bikie leaders was today hauled out of his Inner West waterfront home by police. Jason Fahey and a Hells Angels associate were taken into custody on assault charges.
One of Sydney's most notorious biker leaders was today hauled out of his Inner West waterfront home by the police. Jason Fahey and a Hells Angels associate were taken into custody on assault charges. In April 2024, Jason Ace Fahey, a high-ranking biker gang kingpin, was arrested in his Sydney home. Just a few months before the arrest, Fahey was a popular figure associated with the Bandidos. However, after a decade at the top of the Bandidos hierarchy, everyone was shocked to see Fahey's post of an image he took with senior Hells Angels members. Who is Jason Fahey, and how did a former Bandidos national president patch over to a rival biker gang, the Hells Angels? Jason Ace Fahey is considered one of the most recognizable figures in Australia's bike world. He's been in the game for several years, has dominated, and his influence in the region cannot be underplayed. Fahey's body is adorned with tattoos, and he is always dripped in thick gold chains. He has managed to captivate thousands of followers on Instagram with his funny posts and reels. Outside of Instagram, Fahey is a menace and has spent more than 10 years leading the Bandidos. However, Fahey shocked everyone last year when he announced his sudden move to a rival gang, Hells Angels. At the time, Hells Angels was rapidly expanding its presence in Sydney, gaining new members and establishing itself as a force to be reckoned with. Even though the Hells Angels is not the biggest biker club in Australia, it is considered the largest and most ruthless biker gang in the world. It is estimated that they have about 4,000 members spread across the globe and have about 475 chapters in more than 60 counties. However, a club hungry for growth would do anything to dominate the bike world in a place like Australia. Angelo Pandelli, the supposed president of the Hells Angels, was based in Australia before he fled his Sydney home when he learned that the authorities were hunting him. The Hells Angels leader is now being hunted by both the AFP and the tax office. It is believed that Pandelli stays in the Middle East, bouncing between Turkey and Dubai. He has built a network of underworld connections around the globe while plunging his money into several business ventures. However, even though Pandelli spent a part of his life in Australia, the country is still controlled and dominated by the rebels. They have about 29 chapters and have about 2,000 members. Half of almost all the bickies in Australia belong to the rebels. According to some reports, the Hells Angels intend to increase their presence in Australia. So, dominating Sydney is one of their strategies to spread out to other parts of the country. The Hells Angels leadership believes that Sydney is full of opportunities for the outlaw business, one they would put to good use. Considering the city's extensive reach and history of criminal underworld networks, the Hells Angels would thrive in such an environment as long as they could portray themselves as a force to be reckoned with. The first step to achieving this goal was opening a new Hells Angels chapter, Brighton-Les Sands, a neighborhood considered to be a Comanchero stronghold. The Comanchero has gone a bit soft due to some leadership issues. Some of their leaders, Mark Buttle, Alan Meehan, Mick Murray, and Tarek Zahed, are in jail, waiting for trial because they're accused of different crimes. It seems like the Hells Angels took advantage of this weakness to launch a chapter in their neighborhood, which turned out to be a success. The next big thing they did was converting an entire Rebels MC chapter in Sydney to Hells Angels. This was a big win for the Hells Angels because the Rebels were the largest and most powerful biker club in the city. This bold move not only earned them a significant number of members, it also weakened their rival strongholds. Today, the Hells Angels have 8 chapters, or charters as they call it in Sydney, and they hope to create more till they dominate the city. The gang has exploited a major weakness of the rebels to pull bickies to their side. Ever since Alex Vela, the longtime leader of the rebels, got booted to Malta, they had not been able to find anyone who matched his charisma. The Bandidos are losing grip and have no strength in their territories. In 2023, Fahey posted an image of himself in arms with high-ranking members of the Hells Angels to show that he had defected to the other side. According to reports, Fahey had defected in 2013 but only revealed it a decade later. The high-ranking biker gang had spent over 10 years fighting alongside the Bandidos and even had a BFFB tattoo on his chest, which meant Bandidos forever, forever, Bandidos. In case you don't know, motorcycle clubs do not joke with tattoos. Departing members are expected to cover them over if they don't want the tags forcibly removed. The defection of Fahey, a well-known figure in the Australian biker community and national Bandidos president to the Hells Angels, was a big win for the club. The move had a lot of impacts on their growth in the region. Fahey, having spent over 10 years leading the Bandidos, had gathered a lot of influence and power. He was known for being ruthless and often deploying several tactics to maintain his authority. But that was not all. Fahey's humor, wisdom, and combination of power and wealth made him a legendary figure. As a result, winning Fahey to your club makes you a force people want to be associated with. On the other hand, it was a big blow and disgrace to the Bandidos, who had just lost one of their best in the worst way ever. Fahey's defection to a club that was considered the enemy of his former club would definitely have an impact on other Bandidos who have been looking to patch over to another club. The Fahey brothers, John and Jason Fahey, were also prominent members of the Bandidos MC, who had a reputation for being brutal. The two had established a strong presence in multiple territories across Australia, including Sydney, the Gold Coast, and the South Coast. John Fahey reportedly defected to the Hells Angels after 15 years of leading the Bandidos. This caused a big fight between his former clubmates. However, John's status currently in the underworld remains unclear, as he claims he's no longer a part of the Bikie underworld. Meanwhile, it's believed that Jason Fahey still supports the Bandidos in his little ways. He shows support for the club through his social media posts. According to multiple reports, Jason Fahey ran a debt-collecting business. His job was to collect drug debts, protection money, and loan shark debts for the Bandidos Club in his business. In his own business, Fahey was usually the go-to guy anytime they needed a muscle. The Instagram-famous gangster would use force, his influence, and several tactics to intimidate debtors into paying their dues. His role is what they call an enforcer or collector in organized crime enterprise. This reputation caught the attention of the Hells Angels, and they knew they could put his skills to a better use. So they offered him a similar position, except that this new role came with more incentives. Fahey was doing his debt collection business when he caught the attention of the authorities. The 43-year-old assaulted someone who reportedly owed him debts. This assault would later bring the authorities to his doorstep and place him behind bars for 2 weeks. On April 4, 2024, an organized crime strike force stormed Fahey's apartment and one of Tanis Abboud, Jason Fahey's fellow Bikie in Chiswick. The two lived very close to each other. Tanis's apartment was just about 100 meters away from Fahey's home. The two homes were raided simultaneously, with both Bikies arrested over 2 separate assaults that occurred in 2 different locations. Both Fahey and Tanis were placed in cuffs and transported to Burwood Police Station. In the video released by the NSW Police Force, heavily armed officers could be seen descending upon Fahey's waterfront home on 5 Dock. The first thing they did was knock on the door and notify him of their presence. The influential Bikie, who was likely in bed, opens the door shirtless and subsequently lets them in the apartment. It was clear that Fahey knew that any refusal to grant them entry would likely lead to forced entry. Once the heavily armed officers were in the home, they immediately took control of the scene by strategically positioning themselves around the room while the rest of the team began to search the house. Officers demanded that Fahey stand against the wall while they carried out the raid, to which he complied. This team searched the entire house and didn't leave any stone unturned. As this was going on in Fahey's house, Tanos, a fellow Bikie, was also experiencing the same. Tanos could be seen sitting on the floor, handcuffed and with his head down, while the special security agents scattered his home looking for anything they could find on him. He was eventually escorted out of the building in cuffs, taken to the police van, and transported to the Burwood Police Station for processing. Court documents revealed that Fahey intentionally used a stolen white Porsche SUV to ram into his victim's vehicle. After the collision, Fahey left the vehicle and spoke to the victim as though it was all a mistake, pretending it was an accidental crash. However, the scene became heated when 2 associates emerged from Fahey's stolen Porsche and attempted to force the victim to the back of the car. They claimed the victim was owing some debt, and they have come to remind and intimidate him to pay the debt. According to reports, the victim owes a debt totaling about $200,000. One of Fahey's associates then brought out a hammer from the Porsche and struck it in the face of the victim. As if this was not enough, Fahey allegedly punched the victim multiple times till he sustained several injuries. He reportedly gave the victim 2 uppercuts and crowned it with a strong gut punch before he and his associates fled the scene. Passers-by and other road users who witnessed the scene rushed to help the victim, who suffered a broken cheekbone and had several bruises and cuts around his body. The victim was eventually admitted to St. George Hospital for proper care. Police officers were called to the scene of the incident. Upon reaching the scene, they obtained the surveillance footage, which luckily captured the whole event. Fahey was a popular name to the police, so it was not hard to recognize him from the CCTV footage. Interestingly, he was also wearing his distinctive hoodie, Nike sneakers, and large sunglasses, an attire that the police considered to be his signature attire. During the raid on Fahey's apartment by heavily armed security agents, the squad found clothing matching the one spotted on the CCTV camera. Apparently, Fahey does not joke with his signature attire, but that was not all. The Raptor squad found gears and clothes featuring the Hells Angels logo during the raid. The operation was codenamed Operation Patch, and Fahey's home happened to be one of the homes that was raided in 5 Dock during the operation. Across the entirety of Operation Patch, police seized 2 firearms, as well as suspended 1 firearms license, and issued 36 consorting warnings. Parts of the items seized included Hells Angels gear, as well as a Bandidos jacket. The authorities are yet to specify whether anything was seized in the raid of Fahey's home. Fahey appeared in court and was charged with assault, causing actual bodily harm, demanding property with menaces with intent to steal, failure to comply with digital evidence, and several other charges. The court denied his bail application and is set to stay behind bars till his next court appearance. On the other hand, Tanus Aboud is facing the law for an alleged assault. The 40-year-old is accused of a fray, common assault, and armed with intent to commit an indictable offense. Earlier in March, Tanus got himself in an assault that happened at a gym in 5 Dock. According to reports, the Bicky punched and threatened another man with a pole. However, unlike Fahey, Tanus was granted conditional bail by the court and is scheduled to appear in Burwood Local Court on the 23rd of April. On the other hand, Jason Fahey would spend the next 2 weeks behind bars. When top bikers leave a popular motorcycle club for a rival, it's usually a slap in the face of their former MC. This explains why most motorcycle clubs take offense when you leave them. People who leave without permission may face harassment and isolation from their former brothers. Back in the day, defecting was considered a big deal, and snitches were usually punished. Most times, bikers who defected from a motorcycle club to a rival MC are marked for death. However, it seems motorcycle clubs have gone soft these days. Fahey's defection made the Bandidos look weak. He had worked with the Bandidos for so long and had worked his way to the top. A prominent figure like that leaving the club would portray the MC as one with weak leadership. To crown it all, they left the Bandidos for the Hells Angels, a rival gang. This bold move would encourage other Bickies who have been contemplating a switch to do the same. The fact that Fahey experienced no backlash, restriction, or punishment from his former club would likely encourage several others to go through this route. Fahey was also an influential figure in the Australian bikie community, meaning many of his loyalists would defect with him to his new club. Could also convince some Bandidos members that the Hells Angels would be dominating Sydney and the whole of Australia soon, and they may want to be on the winning side. Fahey's successful defection to the Hells Angels could be seen as another proof that motorcycle gangs are probably getting weaker and softer as time goes by. Come to think of it, an experienced Bicky like Fahey lives a flashy lifestyle, wears designer clothes and the best watches, and would always show off on Instagram. This doesn't seem to be the standard for Bickies in the old days. However, on the other hand, some people are still of the opinion that MCs are still as strict as ever. Do you think motorcycle clubs are becoming more lenient these days? And do you think Fahey's activities, and most importantly extravagant lifestyle on social media, put him in the police's spotlight?